What I discovered in that apartment would shatter everything I thought I knew about my marriage, but it would also become the foundation for the most extraordinary transformation of my life. The woman who walked into that building broken and betrayed would emerge as someone I never imagined I could become. If you think you know where this story is going, you don't. Because sometimes the most devastating discoveries become the keys to unlocking a future more powerful than anything you ever dared to dream. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning of October 15th began with the kind of autumn rain that seems to seep into your bones and settle there permanently. I stood outside the gleaming towers of Morrison Financial Group in downtown Seattle, clutching my black umbrella with hands that had not stopped trembling since the funeral 3 days earlier. The building rose 32 stories into the gray sky, its glass facade reflecting the storm clouds that had been gathering over my life for weeks without my knowledge. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and until 8 days ago I believed I was living a perfectly ordinary life as the wife of a successful financial advisor. David and I had been married for 11 years, living in our comfortable suburban home in Bellevue, planning for retirement, discussing the possibility of adopting children, now that we had accepted that biological parenthood was not in our future. I taught 4th grade at Maple Valley Elementary. David managed investment portfolios for high-net-worth clients, and our biggest concerns centered around weekend plans and whether we should refinish the hardwood floors in the living room. All of that orderly existence had collapsed when David suffered a massive heart attack while driving home from work on October 7th. He was only 39 years old, had passed his physical examination with flying colors just 6 months earlier, and showed no signs of the cardiovascular disease that claimed his life in the space of 4 minutes on Interstate 405. The paramedics said he was unconscious before his car even left the roadway. The doctors assured me he felt no pain. None of their clinical explanations provided any comfort for the stunning reality that my husband was simply gone, leaving me to navigate the bewildering aftermath of sudden loss. The funeral had been a blur of condolences from people I barely knew, casseroles from neighbors, and the surreal experience of making decisions about David's final arrangements while feeling as though I was watching someone else's life unfold. David's business partner, Marcus Chen, had handled most of the professional notifications and assured me that David's clients were being transferred seamlessly to other advisors within the firm. The practical details of death, I discovered, required immediate attention regardless of whether the widow felt capable of addressing them. Now I faced the task of closing David's office, collecting his personal belongings, and severing the final connections to the professional life that had occupied so much of his time and energy. Marcus had offered to handle this responsibility himself, but I felt compelled to see David's workspace one final time, to understand the environment where he had spent the majority of his waking hours during our marriage. The elevator ride to the 24th floor felt interminable. When the doors finally opened, I was greeted by the sophisticated reception area of Morrison Financial Group, with its polished marble floors, contemporary artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows that normally offered spectacular views of Elliott Bay. Today, the windows revealed only gray clouds and rain, matching my internal landscape perfectly. "Mrs. Mitchell, I am so very sorry for your loss." The voice belonged to Patricia Williams, David's executive assistant for the past 4 years. Patricia was an elegant woman in her early 50s, with silver-streaked auburn hair and the kind of professional competence that made complex tasks appear effortless. She had always been gracious during my occasional visits to David's office, remembering details about my teaching schedule and asking thoughtful questions about my students. "Thank you, Patricia. I know David valued your support enormously." I managed to keep my voice steady, though speaking about David in past tense still felt like betraying some fundamental truth about reality. Patricia led me down the hallway toward David's corner office, past conference rooms where other financial advisors were conducting their morning meetings, their voices a low murmur of market analysis and client strategy. David's office occupied prime real estate within the firm, reflecting his status as one of Morrison Financial Group's most successful advisors. The nameplate beside his door still read, "David R. Mitchell, Senior Portfolio Manager," as though he might return from lunch at any moment to resume his meetings. Inside, David's office looked exactly as I remembered from my last visit 6 months earlier. His mahogany desk dominated the space, covered with neat stacks of client files, financial reports, and the Mont Blanc pen set I had given him for our 10th wedding anniversary. Family photographs occupied prominent positions on his credenza, including our wedding portrait and several vacation pictures from our trips to Italy and Scotland. Everything appeared normal, professional, and completely consistent with the life I thought we had shared. "I have prepared boxes for David's personal items," Patricia said, gesturing towards several empty containers arranged near the desk. "His client files and business documents will remain with the firm, of course, but I wanted to ensure that you received everything that belonged to him personally." As Patricia began carefully packing David's belongings, I wandered around the office, touching the books on his shelves, examining the awards and certifications that documented his professional achievements. David had been proud of his success at Morrison Financial Group, often sharing stories about particularly challenging client situations or successful investment strategies. He worked long hours, frequently staying late for client meetings or traveling to conferences, but I had always understood this dedication as necessary for maintaining his reputation and growing his practice. "Mrs. Mitchell, there is something else." Patricia's voice carried a hesitant quality that made me turn from the bookshelf where I had been examining David's collection of investment publications. She was holding a small envelope with my name written in David's distinctive handwriting across the front. "David asked me to give this to you if anything ever happened to him," Patricia explained. "He said it was important that you receive it personally from me, not through any official channels." I accepted the envelope with hands that had begun trembling again. David's handwriting looked hurried, less precise than his usual careful script. The envelope was sealed and felt slightly thick, as though it contained more than a simple letter. "When did he give this to you?" I asked. "About 3 months ago. He seemed troubled about something, though he did not share details with me. He simply said that if anything happened to him, I should make sure you received this envelope privately." 3 months ago would have been July, during what I remembered as a particularly busy period for David's practice. He had been working longer hours than usual, taking phone calls late into the evening, and seemed preoccupied with some unspecified professional challenges. When I had asked about his stress level, David had dismissed my concerns, attributing his distraction to normal business pressures and assuring me that everything was fine. With Patricia watching expectantly, I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a brief letter written in David's handwriting, along with a set of keys I had never seen before. The letter was dated July 22nd, less than 3 months before his death. "Sarah, if you are reading this, then something has happened to me and Patricia has followed my instructions to give you this envelope. I know this will be confusing and probably hurtful, but I need you to understand that everything I did was motivated by love for you, even if it does not seem that way initially. The keys in this envelope open an apartment at 1247 Pine Street, Unit 412. I have been paying for this apartment for the past 2 years, and there are things there that will help explain decisions I made that I could never find the courage to discuss with you directly. I know I should have been braver about sharing this with you while I was alive, but I was afraid of hurting you and afraid of losing you. Please know that you have been the most important person in my life, and nothing you discover will change that truth. Go to the apartment. Everything will make sense once you see what is there. I love you more than I have ever been able to express. David." I read the letter twice, trying to process the implications of David's words. An apartment I knew nothing about, paid for during the last 2 years of our marriage, containing explanations for decisions he had been unable to discuss with me. The possibilities that immediately occurred to me were all devastating variations on themes of betrayal and deception. "Did you know about this apartment?" I asked Patricia, holding up the keys. Patricia's expression revealed genuine surprise. "I had no knowledge of any apartment. David never mentioned such an arrangement to me." I studied the keys in my palm. They appeared to be standard apartment keys, attached to a simple key ring with no identifying markings, except for a small paper tag with 412 written in David's handwriting. The address David had provided was in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, an area of Seattle I rarely visited, and certainly not somewhere David had ever mentioned having any connection. The rational part of my mind urged caution. Whatever David had been hiding in this apartment was likely to be painful, possibly something that would retroactively damage my understanding of our marriage and my memories of the man I had loved. The grieving part of my mind, however, demanded answers. I could not simply ignore David's final request, particularly when he had gone to such lengths to ensure I would receive this information after his death. Patricia, I need to ask you about David's schedule over the past 2 years. Were there times when he said he was working late or traveling for business, when you knew he was not actually in meetings or at conferences? Patricia considered my question carefully before responding. David did maintain a somewhat irregular schedule, particularly during the past year. There were occasions when he would leave the office early, saying he had client meetings, but when those clients called the next day, it became apparent that no meetings had actually taken place. I assumed he was conducting business in less formal settings or handling personal matters that he preferred not to discuss. The weight of David's deception was beginning to settle over me like a heavy blanket. For at least a year, possibly longer, my husband had been lying to me about his whereabouts, maintaining some kind of secret life that required a private apartment and explanations he could not provide while alive. I think I need to go to this apartment, I said, more to myself than to Patricia. Mrs. Mitchell, are you certain that is wise? Perhaps you should have someone accompany you, or wait until you have had more time to process David's death before confronting whatever he has left for you to discover. Patricia's concern was clearly genuine, but I felt an urgent need to understand what David had been hiding. The alternative was living with questions that would undermine every memory of our marriage and every assumption about the man I thought I had known completely. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I need to know, I said simply. I cannot move forward with my life until I understand what David was doing and why he felt he could not share it with me. Patricia nodded, though her expression remained worried. If you are determined to go, perhaps you should not go alone. Would you like me to accompany you? The offer was unexpected and generous, particularly given that Patricia had her own responsibilities at the firm and no obligation to involve herself in the personal complications David had left behind. However, her presence might provide emotional support and practical assistance in whatever I was about to discover. That would be very helpful, if you can spare the time. Patricia checked her watch and made a quick calculation. I can arrange to take the afternoon away from the office. This seems more important than any meetings I have scheduled. As we prepared to leave Morrison Financial Group, I felt as though I was stepping across a threshold from one version of my life into another. The woman who had entered David's office that morning had been a widow, dealing with the straightforward grief of losing her husband unexpectedly. The woman leaving was someone whose entire understanding of her marriage was about to be challenged in ways she could not yet imagine. The drive to Capitol Hill took 30 minutes through Seattle's midday traffic. Patricia and I spoke little during the journey, both of us apparently lost in speculation about what we might find at the apartment David had kept secret for 2 years. The rain continued steadily, creating a rhythmic backdrop to my increasingly anxious thoughts. 1247 Pine Street turned out to be a well-maintained brick building constructed during the 1920s, with architectural details that suggested it had once been quite elegant. The neighborhood around it was a mixture of coffee shops, independent bookstores, and small restaurants that catered to the area's artistic and progressive residents. It was exactly the kind of place David would normally dismiss as too bohemian for his tastes, making his connection to an apartment here even more mysterious. The building's lobby was small but clean, with mailboxes for 48 units and a simple elevator that carried us to the 4th floor. Unit 412 was located at the end of a narrow hallway, behind a door that looked identical to all the others, except for the brass numbers that matched the tag on David's keys. I stood in front of the door for several long moments, key in hand, gathering the courage to discover what my husband had hidden from me for the last 2 years of his life. Patricia waited patiently beside me, her presence providing the support I needed to finally insert the key and turn the lock. The apartment that opened before us was not at all what I had expected. The apartment that greeted us was not a love nest or bachelor pad as I had feared. Instead, I found myself standing in what appeared to be a professional art studio, flooded with natural light from enormous north-facing windows that had been installed where walls once divided smaller rooms. Canvases lined every available surface, some completed paintings displaying extraordinary skill and emotional depth, others works in progress that showed the development of a distinctive artistic vision I had never known existed. The scent of oil paints and turpentine hung in the air, mixed with the earthy smell of wet clay from several sculptures positioned around the room. An easel dominated the center of the space, holding a nearly finished portrait of a young girl with large, expressive eyes and a shy smile. The quality of the work was exceptional, demonstrating technical mastery and artistic sensitivity that spoke of years of dedicated practice and natural talent. Patricia and I moved through the studio in stunned silence, examining canvases that revealed a side of David I had never suspected existed. The paintings ranged from intimate portraits to sweeping landscapes, from abstract expressions of emotion to detailed studies of architectural forms. Each piece showed evidence of careful attention and passionate commitment to the craft of painting. This was not the work of a casual hobbyist or someone seeking temporary escape from professional pressures. These were the creations of a serious artist who had developed his skills over many years of consistent practice. "Sarah, look at this," Patricia called from the far corner of the studio. She was standing before a large canvas that showed a familiar scene rendered in warm, golden tones. I recognized the view immediately as the sun set over Puget Sound from our back deck, painted with such accuracy and emotional resonance that I could almost feel the evening breeze and hear the distant sound of fairy horns across the water. As I examined the painting more closely, I noticed a small signature in the lower right corner that read D. Mitchell, followed by a date from just 6 months earlier. David had painted this view of our shared home with obvious love and attention to detail, capturing not just the visual elements of the scene, but the peaceful emotion I had always associated with our evening conversations on that deck. Moving deeper into the studio, I discovered additional paintings that depicted scenes from our life together, but interpreted through David's artistic vision rather than literal representation. Our wedding day was rendered as an impressionistic swirl of white and gold, focusing on the emotional essence of the ceremony rather than documentary detail. Our vacation in Tuscany appeared as a series of small studies capturing the quality of Mediterranean light falling across ancient stone buildings. These personal paintings were interspersed with works that clearly drew from David's imagination or other sources of inspiration. Several canvases showed children in various settings, painted with particular warmth and sensitivity. The portrait on the central easel was one of many studies of young people, each capturing something essential about childhood innocence and possibility that suggested David had been deeply moved by working with children as subjects. Patricia had been examining a collection of notebooks stacked on a table near the windows. "Sarah, I think you should see these," she said, opening one of the books to reveal pages covered with David's handwriting, sketches, and what appeared to be detailed records of his artistic development. The notebooks contained a comprehensive record of David's secret artistic life spanning the past 5 years. Early entries revealed his initial attempts to return to painting, a passion he had apparently abandoned during college, when practical concerns about career and financial security had directed him toward finance. The progression documented in these pages showed his gradual development from tentative beginner to accomplished artist, along with his growing sense of purpose and satisfaction derived from creative work. One entry from 2 years earlier particularly captured my attention. "I have been thinking about the children I see when Sarah talks about her students. She describes their creativity and curiosity with such joy, and I find myself wondering what it would be like to capture that energy in painting. Today I started a portrait study based on her description of Marcus, the boy in her class who loves to draw dragons during lunch break. I want to understand what she sees in these children that brings her such fulfillment." As I continued reading, the notebooks revealed that David's interest in painting children had evolved into something much more significant than casual artistic exploration. 3 years ago, he had begun volunteering at Seattle Children's Hospital, spending time in the pediatric ward painting portraits of young patients as gifts for their families. The entries describing these experiences showed a side of David I had never known existed, someone deeply moved by the courage and resilience of children facing serious medical challenges. The volunteer work had led to additional opportunities. David had started teaching basic art classes for children in the hospital's therapeutic programs, discovering that he had both the patience and skill necessary to help young patients express themselves through creative activities. The notebooks contained detailed observations about individual children he had worked with, their artistic development, and the ways that creative expression seemed to provide comfort and hope during difficult treatments. What struck me most powerfully about these entries was the obvious joy and sense of purpose David had found in this work. His writing revealed someone who had discovered a calling that utilized his natural talents while contributing to something he considered deeply meaningful. The contrast between his enthusiasm for these activities and his perfunctory comments about his financial advisory work was stark and telling. Patricia had moved to another area of the studio where several framed certificates hung on the wall. "Sarah, David was apparently quite accomplished in this field," she said, pointing to recognition awards from various charitable organizations and art therapy programs. One certificate acknowledged his contribution of over 500 hours of volunteer service to Seattle Children's Hospital. Another recognized his completion of certification training in art therapy techniques for pediatric patients. The documentation revealed a systematic commitment to developing expertise in working with children through art, far beyond casual volunteer work. David had invested considerable time and effort in formal training, continuing education, and building relationships within the therapeutic art community. This was not a hobby or temporary interest, but a sustained dedication to developing skills that would enable him to help children in meaningful ways. As I absorbed the scope of David's secret artistic life, my emotions shifted from shock and confusion towards something approaching understanding. The man who had been hiding this apartment and these activities was not the unfaithful husband I had initially feared, but someone who had been pursuing a passion and sense of purpose he apparently felt unable to share with me directly. However, this realization raised different but equally troubling questions about our marriage. Why had David felt the need to keep such meaningful and admirable work secret from his wife? What about our relationship had prevented him from sharing activities that clearly brought him joy and fulfillment? Had I somehow created an environment where David felt his artistic interests would be dismissed or discouraged? Patricia found a folder containing correspondence related to David's volunteer work and art therapy activities. The letters revealed that David had been considering making a significant career transition. Several organizations had offered him positions that would have allowed him to work full-time in art therapy or children's programs, utilizing his artistic skills and passion for helping young people facing medical challenges. One letter particularly stood out, from the director of a new pediatric art therapy program at Seattle Children's Hospital. The position offered significantly less financial compensation than David's work at Morrison Financial Group, but would have provided the opportunity to establish and lead a comprehensive therapeutic art program serving children throughout the region. The letter was dated just 2 months before David's death, and his handwritten notes in the margins suggested he had been seriously considering accepting the opportunity. The financial implications of such a career change would have been substantial. David's income as a financial advisor supported our comfortable lifestyle, our mortgage payments, and our savings for retirement. A transition to nonprofit work would have required significant adjustments to our spending and long-term financial plans. However, reading about the position and understanding David's obvious passion for the work, I realized that these practical considerations might have been worth discussing together, rather than David struggling with the decision in isolation. As Patricia and I continued exploring the studio, we discovered additional evidence of the depth of David's commitment to his artistic development and therapeutic work. A small library contained books on child psychology, art therapy techniques, and pediatric medical conditions, along with exhibition catalogs from museums and galleries featuring contemporary artists who worked with similar themes of healing and hope. Several of David's paintings were clearly inspired by his hospital work, though they maintained the privacy and dignity of the children who had served as subjects. Rather than literal portraits, these works captured the emotional essence of childhood resilience, hope persisting in difficult circumstances, and the healing power of creative expression. The technical quality of these pieces was exceptional, but more importantly, they conveyed genuine compassion and deep understanding of their subjects. One particularly moving series showed children's hands engaged in various creative activities, holding paintbrushes, molding clay, drawing with crayons. Each painting in the series focused on the concentration and determination visible in these small hands, as they worked to create something beautiful, despite the medical challenges their owners faced. The series demonstrated both David's artistic skill and his profound respect for the children he had worked with. Near the easel, I found a calendar showing David's volunteer schedule at the hospital and his private teaching commitments with individual families whose children were receiving extended treatment. The time commitment was substantial, typically 15 to 20 hours per week, all arranged around his regular business schedule at Morrison Financial Group. David had been maintaining essentially two full-time careers, managing investment portfolios during conventional business hours, while pursuing his artistic and therapeutic work during evenings and weekends. The physical evidence of David's dual life raised questions about how I had failed to notice the signs of his extensive outside commitments. Looking back, I could now interpret his frequent late evenings and weekend commitments differently. What I had assumed were business obligations had actually been volunteer work at the hospital and private art instruction, with children and families dealing with serious medical situations. David's careful scheduling had allowed him to maintain his secret artistic life while fulfilling his professional responsibilities and spending time with me. But the energy required to manage such extensive commitments must have been enormous. I began to understand why he had seemed tired in recent months, and why he had occasionally appeared distracted during our conversations at home. Patricia discovered a small desk area where David had kept detailed records of his volunteer work, including photographs of artwork created by children he had worked with, progress notes about their therapeutic development, and letters from families expressing gratitude for his support during difficult times. These documents revealed the profound impact David's work had made on dozens of children and their families over the past 3 years. One letter from the parents of a 7-year-old girl undergoing cancer treatment particularly captured the significance of David's contribution. They described how their daughter had been withdrawn and frightened during the early stages of her treatment until David began working with her on painting projects. Through art, she had found ways to express her fears and hopes, regaining confidence and finding joy even in the hospital environment. The letter credited David's patient teaching and artistic guidance with helping their daughter maintain emotional resilience throughout her recovery process. Reading these testimonials, I began to understand why David had found such fulfillment in this work despite the demanding schedule it required. His artistic skills were providing tangible benefit to children facing serious challenges, offering them tools for expression and coping that complemented their medical treatment. This was work that mattered in fundamental ways that his financial advisory practice, however successful, could not match. As the afternoon light began to fade, Patricia and I had examined most of the studio and begun to piece together a comprehensive picture of David's secret artistic life. What had initially appeared to be evidence of marital betrayal had revealed itself as something entirely different. A man pursuing a calling that brought him deep satisfaction while struggling with how to integrate this passion with his existing professional and personal responsibilities. The revelation was simultaneously comforting and disturbing. Comforting because David had not been unfaithful or engaged in activities that undermined our marriage relationship. Disturbing because his inability to share something so meaningful with me suggested fundamental communication problems in our marriage that I had been unaware of. As we prepared to leave the studio, I noticed one final element that brought David's situation into sharp focus. Pinned to a bulletin board near the entrance was a business plan David had been developing for an independent art therapy practice, serving children with serious medical conditions. The plan outlined his vision for combining individual therapeutic sessions with group classes, family support programs, and partnerships with medical facilities throughout the Seattle area. The financial projections showed that such a practice could potentially generate sufficient income to support a modest lifestyle, while allowing David to work full-time in an area that provided deep personal satisfaction. However, the startup costs and initial period of reduced income would have required significant financial sacrifices and careful planning to implement successfully. David had been on the verge of proposing a complete transformation of our life together, moving from the comfortable predictability of his corporate career toward the uncertainty and meaningful work of therapeutic art practice. This transition would have required my support and partnership, along with willingness to accept reduced financial security in exchange for David's increased personal fulfillment and our shared contribution to helping children and families in crisis. The tragedy was not that David had been hiding something shameful or destructive, but that he had been afraid to share something beautiful and important. His secret represented not betrayal, but rather a failure of communication and trust that had prevented us from exploring possibilities that might have enriched both our lives in fundamental ways. Standing in that studio filled with evidence of David's artistic talent and compassionate commitment to helping children, I felt a complex mixture of grief, pride, and regret that would take considerable time to process fully. The man I had lost was even more remarkable than I had known, but our marriage had somehow failed to provide the emotional safety and support that would have allowed him to share his most meaningful work with me openly. As Patricia and I locked the apartment and walked back toward our car, I realized that David's final gift to me was not just the revelation of his secret artistic life, but the challenge to understand why he had felt unable to share it with me while he was alive. Understanding this failure would require examining my own assumptions, expectations, and communication patterns in ways that might prove uncomfortable but were clearly necessary for my personal growth. The woman who had entered that apartment expecting to discover evidence of betrayal had instead found evidence of a man whose passion for helping children through art had been so powerful that he had sustained a demanding double life, rather than risk losing either his artistic calling or his marriage relationship. The question now was what I would do with this knowledge, and how it might change my understanding of what was possible in my own life going forward. The drive back from Capitol Hill passed in contemplative silence. Patricia had offered to take me home, but I found myself directing her toward Lincoln Park instead, needing the solitude of the waterfront to process what we had discovered. As we sat on a bench overlooking Puget Sound watching the late afternoon ferry traffic navigate between Vashon Island and the mainland, I struggled to reconcile the David the first thought I had known, with the passionate artist and devoted children's advocate, whose secret life we had just uncovered. "I keep thinking about all the evenings he said he was working late," I finally said to Patricia. "How many of those times was he actually at the hospital, painting with sick children? How many business trips were really art therapy workshops or volunteer training sessions?" Patricia considered my question carefully before responding. "From what I observed at the office, David's dedication to his clients remained consistent throughout the period when he must have been developing his artistic practice. His professional performance never suffered, which suggests he was managing extraordinary personal discipline to maintain both commitments effectively." The implications of Patricia's observation were both impressive and troubling. David had been living essentially two complete lives, excelling in his financial advisory work, while simultaneously building expertise and reputation in an entirely different field. The level of organization, energy, and commitment required for such a sustained effort spoke to remarkable personal capabilities that I had never fully recognized or appreciated. However, the fact that David had felt compelled to maintain such elaborate secrecy about work that was clearly meaningful and admirable raised uncomfortable questions about our marriage relationship. What had I done or failed to do that made David believe he could not share his artistic passion with me? Had I somehow communicated that his interests outside of financial success were unimportant or unwelcome? As I reflected on our conversations over the past several years, I began to recall moments that took on new significance in light of what I now knew. David had occasionally mentioned children he encountered through unspecified volunteer work, describing their resilience and creativity with obvious admiration. When I had asked for details about these volunteer activities, David had provided vague responses about helping with general hospital programs, deflecting further questions without directly lying, but certainly without revealing the full scope of his involvement. There had also been times when David expressed interest in my teaching experiences with particular enthusiasm, asking detailed questions about how I helped students overcome learning challenges or develop confidence in their abilities. I had interpreted his interest as general spousal support for my career, but now I understood that he was likely drawing connections between my work with children and his own developing expertise in therapeutic art education. The realization that David had been seeking ways to connect his secret passion with my professional experience, but had felt unable to do so directly, highlighted the communication barriers that had apparently existed in our marriage without my awareness. We had developed parallel interests in working with children, but had never found ways to explore these shared values together or consider how they might influence our future plans as a couple. Patricia and I remained at the park until the sun began setting behind the Olympic Mountains, casting the sound and the golden light that David had captured so beautifully in his painting of our evening deck conversations. The irony was not lost on me that David had immortalized moments of apparent intimacy and connection between us while maintaining such significant secrets about his deepest personal interests and professional aspirations. "Sarah, may I ask you something that might be difficult to consider?" Patricia said as we watched the last ferry of the evening approach the downtown terminal. I nodded, prepared for whatever insight Patricia might offer based on her years of working closely with David. In my experience with David at the office, he was someone who sought approval and validation from authority figures quite intensely. He worked extremely hard to exceed expectations and gain recognition from the senior partners at Morrison Financial Group. I wonder if his reluctance to share his artistic interests with you reflected similar concerns about your approval and acceptance. Patricia's observation struck me as both perceptive and painful. If David had been seeking my approval for his life choices, then my failure to create an environment where he felt safe sharing his authentic interests represented a significant shortcoming in our marriage relationship. The possibility that David had feared my judgment or disapproval about his artistic pursuits suggested that I had somehow communicated values or expectations that prioritized conventional success over personal fulfillment. Thinking back to our early relationship and marriage, I could identify several instances where I had expressed pride in David's professional achievements and financial success in ways that might have reinforced his belief that my love and respect were contingent on his maintaining his corporate career trajectory. When David had been promoted to senior portfolio manager, I had celebrated enthusiastically and shared the news with friends and family as evidence of his professional competence and our financial security. However, I could not recall ever asking David whether his work provided personal satisfaction or aligned with his deeper interests and values. I had assumed that professional success naturally correlated with personal fulfillment, without considering that David might have talents and passions that existed entirely outside his chosen career path. The drive home from Lincoln Park gave me additional time to examine my own assumptions about success, purpose, and the elements that constituted a meaningful life. As a teacher, I had always found satisfaction in helping children develop their abilities and confidence. But I had somehow failed to recognize that David might have similar interests and aptitudes that were being frustrated by his focus on financial advisory work. When I arrived at our house in Bellevue, the familiar environment felt different than it had when I left that morning. The photographs of David and me throughout our home now seemed to tell only part of our story, focusing on vacations, celebrations, and social events, while revealing nothing about the passion that had clearly been driving David's personal development during the final years of his life. I walked through our house with new awareness, looking for signs of David's artistic interests that I might have overlooked or dismissed. In his home office, I found several art books that I had previously assumed were related to investment in art markets rather than personal artistic study. A small sketchbook tucked into his desk drawer contained preliminary drawings that were clearly studies for paintings I had seen in the Capitol Hill studio. Most significantly, I discovered that David had been donating substantial amounts to Seattle Children's Hospital and several art therapy organizations, contributions that appeared in our tax records but that I had never questioned in detail. The financial records revealed that David had been systematically supporting the very programs where he volunteered, contributing both his time and significant personal funds to organizations that aligned with his secret passion for helping children through therapeutic art. The scope of David's commitment to this work, both personally and financially, demonstrated that his artistic and therapeutic interests were not casual hobbies but rather a calling that had been guiding his decisions and priorities for years, without my knowledge. The tragedy was not that David had been pursuing meaningful work, but that our marriage had somehow failed to provide the emotional safety and support that would have allowed him to share this calling with me openly. That evening, I called my sister Jennifer, who lived in Portland and had always maintained a close relationship with both David and me. Jennifer had occasionally commented that David seemed happiest when discussing children or educational topics, observations that I had attributed to his general interest in my teaching career, rather than recognizing as evidence of his own passion for working with young people. "Jen, I need to tell you about something I discovered today," I said, and proceeded to describe the apartment, the art studio, and the evidence of David's extensive volunteer work with children at Seattle Children's Hospital. Jennifer listened without interruption until I had finished describing the full scope of David's secret artistic life. Her response was both supportive and challenging in ways I had not anticipated. "Sarah, I have to say that this discovery does not surprise me as much as it probably should," Jennifer said. "David always seemed like someone who had depths that he was not expressing fully. When he talked about your students or about children in general, there was an energy and enthusiasm in his voice that I never heard when he discussed his work at the financial firm." Jennifer's observation forced me to confront the possibility that David's artistic passion and calling to work with children might have been apparent to others, even while remaining hidden from me. If my own sister had recognized qualities in David that I had missed, then my failure to understand his authentic interests and aspirations represented a more significant oversight than I had initially realized. "Why do you think he never shared this with me?" I asked Jennifer. "I think David was someone who desperately wanted to be the person he thought you needed him to be," Jennifer replied. "He knew you valued stability and financial security, and he probably convinced himself that revealing his desire to change careers would disappoint you or threaten the life you had built together." Jennifer's assessment highlighted the complex dynamics that had apparently shaped David's decision-making throughout our marriage. Rather than discussing his evolving interests and exploring possibilities for integrating his artistic passion with our shared life, David had chosen to maintain separate identities that allowed him to pursue his calling, while protecting what he perceived as my expectations for our relationship. The conversation with Jennifer continued for over an hour, during which she helped me recognize patterns in David's behavior that I had misinterpreted or overlooked entirely. His particular interest in family discussions about meaning and purpose, his questions about how I found fulfillment in teaching despite the modest financial compensation, and his occasional comments about people who had left corporate careers to pursue more personally meaningful work, had all been signals that I had failed to recognize as expressions of his own internal conflicts. After ending the call with Jennifer, I spent the remainder of the evening reading through David's notebooks from the studio, trying to understand his thought process and emotional development throughout his journey, from secret hobbyist to accomplished therapeutic artist. The entries revealed someone grappling with fundamental questions about purpose, contribution, and authenticity that went far beyond simple career dissatisfaction. One entry from 18 months earlier particularly captured David's internal struggle. "I have been thinking about legacy and what I want my life to have meant when it is over. Managing investment portfolios provides financial security and professional recognition, but I cannot identify any lasting positive impact on the world that results from this work. When I paint with the children at the hospital, I see immediate evidence that my time and energy are contributing to something meaningful. These children leave our sessions with tools for expression and coping that they did not have before. Their families are grateful in ways that suggest genuine value has been created. I wish I could find the courage to discuss this with Sarah, but I fear that she has built her expectations for our life around assumptions that I am not sure I can fulfill indefinitely." Reading David's private thoughts about our marriage and his concerns about my expectations proved both illuminating and heartbreaking. He had been struggling with fundamental questions about purpose and authenticity, while feeling unable to share these concerns with the person who should have been his closest confidant and supporter. The failure of communication represented by this situation extended beyond simple miscommunication to suggest deeper problems with trust, vulnerability, and emotional intimacy in our relationship. However, David's notebooks also revealed his deep love and respect for me, along with his genuine desire to protect our marriage relationship, even while pursuing his artistic calling. He had been seeking ways to honor both his authentic interests and his commitment to me, but had been unable to find approaches that satisfied both priorities simultaneously. As I continued reading, I discovered that David had been planning to discuss his desire for a career transition with me following the completion of his art therapy certification program, which had been scheduled for completion just weeks after his death. He had been developing specific proposals for how we might manage the financial implications of his career change, including potential part-time consulting arrangements that would provide some continued income from his financial expertise, while allowing him to focus primarily on therapeutic artwork. The timing of David's death had prevented him from sharing these carefully developed plans with me, leaving me to discover his passion and aspirations through exploration of his secret studio, rather than through the honest conversation he had been preparing to initiate. The tragedy was compounded by the realization that David's concerns about my reaction to his proposed career change might have been unfounded, that I might have been more supportive and adaptable than he had assumed. Reading David's notebooks late into the evening, I began to understand that his secret artistic life represented not just hidden talent and passion, but also a blueprint for living more authentically and contributing more meaningfully to the world. The children he had worked with, the families he had supported, and the therapeutic programs he had helped develop represented tangible evidence that individual commitment and skill could create lasting positive impact on others' lives. As I prepared for bed that night, I found myself thinking not just about the David I had lost, but about the questions his secret life raised, about my own choices, priorities, and potential for contributing to something larger than personal comfort and security. David's example suggested possibilities for meaningful work and authentic living that I had never seriously considered for myself, but that now seemed both inspiring and challenging in ways that would require careful consideration and possibly fundamental changes in my own approach to life and career. The following morning brought the first day since David's funeral that I awakened with a sense of purpose rather than overwhelming grief. The revelations about his secret artistic life had fundamentally altered my understanding of loss, transforming it from a simple ending into a complex beginning that demanded active response rather than passive acceptance. As I prepared for what would normally have been another day of managing funeral arrangements and administrative details, I found myself driven by questions that extended far beyond the practical concerns of widowhood. The central question that had emerged from my examination of David's notebooks and artistic work was whether I possessed similar capacities for meaningful contribution that I had never recognized or developed. David's transformation from corporate professional to passionate advocate for children suggested that authentic calling could exist alongside conventional career success, waiting for recognition and courage to pursue it actively. His example challenged me to examine my own assumptions about purpose, fulfillment, and the relationship between security and authentic living. Rather than returning immediately to my teaching responsibilities at Maple Valley Elementary, I had arranged for extended bereavement leave that would allow me to process David's death without the immediate pressure of classroom management and lesson planning. This temporary freedom from professional obligations created space for reflection and exploration that I had not experienced since my early 20s, before career and marriage had established the routines that defined my adult identity. I began that morning by returning to David's studio, this time alone, and with permission from the building management to access the apartment for an extended period while I determined what to do with his artistic work and therapeutic materials. The morning light streaming through the large, north-facing windows illuminated the canvases differently than they had appeared during my initial visit with Patricia, revealing details and subtleties that I had missed during my first shocked examination of David's secret artistic life. Spending time alone among David's paintings allowed me to appreciate not just the technical skill he had developed, but the emotional intelligence and compassion that informed his artistic choices. The portraits of children showed remarkable sensitivity to their individual personalities and circumstances, capturing qualities of resilience and hope that spoke to David's deep understanding of their experiences. These were not sentimental or superficial representations, but rather honest and respectful interpretations of young people facing serious challenges with courage and dignity. The paintings that depicted scenes from our shared life together revealed David's perspective on our marriage with startling clarity. The sunset view from our deck, which I had always considered a pleasant but unremarkable evening routine, was rendered with such warmth and attention to detail that it clearly represented something profoundly meaningful to David. His artistic interpretation of our wedding day emphasized the emotional essence of commitment and love, rather than the social elements of celebration that had dominated my own memories of the event. These personal paintings suggested that David had found deep satisfaction and meaning in our relationship, even while struggling with his inability to share his authentic interests with me directly. The disconnect between his artistic celebration of our marriage and his secrecy about his passion for therapeutic artwork highlighted the complexity of his internal experience and the tragedy of communication barriers that had prevented fuller integration of his public and private identities. As I examined David's artistic materials and reference books, I began to understand the systematic approach he had taken to developing his skills and knowledge in art therapy. The progression from basic drawing and painting techniques to advanced understanding of therapeutic applications demonstrated the same methodical competence that had characterized his success in financial advisory work. David had approached his artistic development with the same professional discipline and commitment to excellence that had distinguished his corporate career. However, the therapeutic art materials also revealed a more personal dimension of David's development that extended beyond technical skill acquisition. Scattered throughout his reference books were handwritten notes about individual children he had worked with, observations about their emotional needs and artistic preferences, and reflections on the most effective approaches for helping young patients express their feelings and develop coping strategies through creative activities. These personal notes revealed David's evolution from someone applying learned techniques to someone developing genuine expertise based on deep understanding of his students and their unique circumstances. The progression documented in these materials showed David becoming not just a competent art instructor, but a thoughtful therapeutic practitioner who tailored his approach to the specific needs and capabilities of each child he worked with. The depth of David's commitment to this work raised questions about my own professional development and the extent to which I had pursued excellence and innovation in my teaching career. While I had always been a competent and dedicated teacher, I realized that I had approached my work primarily as a job rather than as a calling that demanded continuous learning and growth. David's example suggested possibilities for professional engagement that went far beyond meeting basic expectations or maintaining adequate performance standards. That afternoon, I decided to visit Seattle Children's Hospital to better understand the environment where David had found such fulfillment and to meet some of the people who had worked with him in the art therapy programs. The hospital's volunteer coordination office was able to arrange meetings with several staff members who had collaborated with David, including Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the pediatric psychologist who had supervised his therapeutic artwork. Dr. Martinez received me in her office overlooking the hospital's healing garden, a carefully designed outdoor space where children and families could find respite from the intensity of medical treatment environments. Her manner was both professional and compassionate, reflecting the balance between clinical competence and emotional sensitivity that seemed to characterize the hospital's approach to pediatric care. David was an exceptional volunteer, Dr. Martinez began. His combination of artistic skill and intuitive understanding of children's emotional needs made him particularly effective in our therapeutic programs. Many of our young patients formed strong connections with him that contributed significantly to their ability to cope with medical treatments and maintain emotional resilience during extended hospital stays. Dr. Martinez explained that David's impact extended beyond individual therapeutic sessions to include contributions to program development and staff training that had enhanced the hospital's overall capacity to provide emotional support to pediatric patients. His artistic expertise had informed the design of new therapeutic spaces, his understanding of children's developmental needs had influenced program protocols, and his fundraising efforts had supported equipment purchases and program expansion that benefited hundreds of children and families. David often spoke about his wife who was a teacher, Dr. Martinez continued. He believed that your experience with children in educational settings would translate effectively to therapeutic environments, and he had mentioned hoping to discuss volunteer opportunities with you at some point in the future. The revelation that David had been considering ways to involve me in his therapeutic artwork added another layer of complexity to my understanding of his secret activities. Rather than simply pursuing individual fulfillment, David had apparently been thinking about possibilities for shared contribution that could have strengthened our marriage, while allowing both of us to engage in meaningful work with children facing serious challenges. Dr. Martinez offered to show me the therapeutic art spaces where David had worked, providing context for understanding the environment that had inspired his passion and commitment. The pediatric art therapy room was designed with careful attention to creating a welcoming and creative atmosphere that would help children feel comfortable expressing themselves artistically. Natural light, cheerful colors, and child-sized furniture created an environment that balanced medical necessity with emotional warmth and creative possibility. The room displayed several examples of collaborative artwork created by children working with volunteer instructors, including pieces that showed David's distinctive teaching style and artistic influence. These collaborative works demonstrated his ability to guide young artists in developing their skills while maintaining their individual creative vision and personal expression. The balance between instruction and encouragement evident in these pieces reflected sophisticated understanding of how to support children's artistic development without imposing adult expectations or limitations. Meeting with hospital staff and observing the therapeutic art program in operation provided me with concrete understanding of the impact that individual commitment and skill could have on children's experiences during medical treatment. The volunteers and staff members I encountered were clearly dedicated to creating positive outcomes for young patients. But they were also ordinary people who had discovered ways to contribute their talents and energy to something larger than personal advancement or financial success. Dr. Martinez invited me to observe a therapeutic art session in progress, with appropriate privacy protections for the children involved. Watching young patients engage with creative activities under the guidance of skilled volunteers provided powerful insight into the therapeutic value of artistic expression and the importance of supportive adult mentorship during times of crisis and uncertainty. The children I observed ranged in age from 5 to 15, representing various medical conditions and treatment protocols, but all sharing the common experience of facing health challenges that required extended hospital involvement. Despite their circumstances, they approached the art activities with enthusiasm and creativity that spoke to the resilience and adaptability that David had captured so effectively in his paintings. The volunteer instructors worked with individual children and small groups, providing technical guidance while encouraging personal expression and emotional exploration through artistic media. The atmosphere was simultaneously focused and relaxed, allowing children to engage seriously with creative work while maintaining the playful and experimental approach that characterized effective learning environments. Observing this therapeutic art session helped me understand why David had found such fulfillment in this work, and why he had been willing to maintain the demanding schedule required to participate regularly while continuing his corporate career. The immediate evidence of positive impact on children's emotional well-being and creative development provided the kind of meaningful feedback that was largely absent from his financial advisory work, regardless of its professional success and financial rewards. As the session concluded, several children approached me to share their artwork and ask questions about my relationship to David, whom they remembered with obvious affection and respect. Their spontaneous comments about David's patience, encouragement, and artistic skill provided additional confirmation of his effectiveness as a therapeutic art instructor and his genuine care for their individual development and well-being. One 12-year-old girl named Maya, who was receiving treatment for leukemia, showed me a watercolor painting she had created under David's guidance during previous sessions. The painting depicted a garden scene with extraordinary attention to color and detail, demonstrating both her natural artistic ability and the technical skills she had developed through David's instruction. "Mr. David taught me how to make the colors blend together without getting muddy," Maya explained as she pointed to specific areas of her painting. "He said that watercolors are like emotions, and you have to be patient and gentle to make them work the way you want them to." Maya's comment captured something essential about David's approach to therapeutic art instruction that extended beyond technical skill development to include emotional guidance and life lessons that could support children's overall development and resilience. His ability to connect artistic techniques with broader principles for managing challenges and expressing feelings demonstrated the sophisticated understanding that had made him particularly effective in therapeutic environments. The hospital visit concluded with Dr. Martinez providing information about volunteer opportunities that might interest me, including both direct service positions working with children and supportive roles that could utilize my educational background and administrative experience. She emphasized that the hospital's therapeutic programs relied heavily on volunteers who brought diverse skills and perspectives to the work of supporting children and families during medical treatment. "We are always seeking volunteers who understand children's developmental needs and learning processes," Dr. Martinez explained. "Your teaching experience would be particularly valuable in our educational support programs, where we help children maintain academic progress during extended hospital stays." The possibility of contributing to the hospital's programs while honoring David's memory and continuing his commitment to helping children facing medical challenges represented an opportunity that I had not previously considered but that seemed both meaningful and achievable. Unlike David's transition from corporate career to therapeutic artwork, my involvement could build directly on my existing professional skills and experience while expanding into new areas of application and impact, That evening, I returned to David's studio to examine his artistic work with new understanding gained from observing the therapeutic environment where he had found such fulfillment. The paintings took on additional significance when viewed as expressions of his commitment to helping children find hope and beauty despite difficult circumstances. The technical excellence of his work was impressive, but the emotional intelligence and compassion that informed his artistic choices were even more remarkable. As I prepared to leave the studio, I noticed a letter addressed to me that had been placed prominently on David's easel, apparently left there deliberately for me to discover during a future visit. The envelope was sealed and marked with my name in David's careful handwriting, along with a note indicating that it should be opened only after I had visited the hospital and spoken with Dr. Martinez. The letter contained David's final thoughts about his artistic work and his hopes for how I might choose to honor his memory while pursuing my own potential for meaningful contribution. His words revealed the depth of his love for me and his confidence in my capacity to find fulfillment and purpose beyond the conventional expectations that had shaped our marriage relationship. Reading David's final letter in the studio, surrounded by evidence of his passion and commitment, I understood that his legacy was not just the artistic work he had created or the children he had helped, but the example he had provided for living authentically and contributing meaningfully to the world despite obstacles and uncertainties that might discourage less committed individuals. David's final letter proved to be the catalyst that transformed my passive grief into active determination to honor his memory through meaningful action. The contents of that letter challenged every assumption I had maintained about my own capabilities and potential for contributing to something larger than personal comfort. His words revealed not only his deep understanding of my character and abilities, but also his conviction that I possessed untapped potential for creating positive impact in ways that I had never seriously considered. The letter began with David's acknowledgement of the communication failures that had prevented him from sharing his artistic passion with me directly during his lifetime. He accepted responsibility for allowing fear and uncertainty to create barriers between us, while also expressing his belief that our marriage had provided him with emotional stability and support that enabled his development as both an artist and therapeutic practitioner. His perspective on our relationship was more generous and understanding than my own self-critical assessment had been. However, the most significant portion of the letter focused on David's observations about my potential for meaningful work beyond my current teaching position. He had apparently been observing my interactions with students, my approach to educational challenges, and my natural empathy for children facing difficulties with far greater attention than I had realized. His assessment of my capabilities was both affirming and challenging in ways that demanded serious consideration. David wrote that he had observed my particular gift for connecting with children who struggled with conventional educational approaches, helping them develop confidence and skills through patient encouragement and creative problem-solving techniques. He believed that these same qualities would translate effectively to therapeutic environments where children needed support in processing emotional challenges and maintaining hope during difficult circumstances. More specifically, David had been developing a proposal for a collaborative program that would combine his artistic expertise with my educational background to create comprehensive support services for children facing extended medical treatment. The program would address both the academic continuity needs that arose during hospital stays and the emotional processing requirements that were essential for maintaining psychological resilience throughout medical treatment protocols. The letter included detailed outlines for this proposed collaboration, demonstrating that David had been thinking systematically about how we might work together to create something more impactful than either of us could accomplish individually. His vision encompassed educational support services, creative expression opportunities, family involvement programs, and staff training initiatives that would require the combined expertise that our different professional backgrounds could provide. Reading about this unrealized collaboration was simultaneously inspiring and heartbreaking. David had been planning ways for us to work together that would have honored both of our authentic interests, while strengthening our marriage through shared commitment to meaningful contribution. The tragedy was not just that his death had prevented this collaboration, but that our communication barriers had prevented us from exploring these possibilities while he was alive. However, David's letter also contained his conviction that I could pursue similar meaningful work independently, potentially developing programs and approaches that would extend his legacy, while reflecting my own unique perspective and capabilities. He had included specific suggestions for how I might begin exploring opportunities at Seattle Children's Hospital and other organizations that serve children facing serious challenges. The letter concluded with David's expression of confidence in my ability to find fulfillment and purpose beyond the conventional expectations that had shaped our marriage relationship. He encouraged me to consider possibilities that might initially seem intimidating or impractical, emphasizing that meaningful contribution often required stepping beyond familiar comfort zones and accepting temporary uncertainty in pursuit of authentic engagement with work that mattered deeply. Reading David's final thoughts about my potential while sitting in his studio surrounded by evidence of his artistic accomplishment and therapeutic commitment created a profound sense of both loss and possibility. The man who had known me most intimately believed that I possessed capabilities for meaningful contribution that I had never fully recognized or developed. His assessment carried weight precisely because it was based on years of observation and understanding, rather than casual encouragement or superficial optimism. The following week, I began taking concrete steps to explore the possibilities that David's letter had outlined. Dr. Martinez had extended an invitation to participate in volunteer orientation sessions at Seattle Children's Hospital, providing an opportunity to learn about various programs and determine where my background and interests might be most effectively applied. The orientation process would require several weeks of training and evaluation, during which I could assess whether hospital-based therapeutic work represented a direction I wanted to pursue seriously. Simultaneously, I arranged meetings with administrators at Maple Valley Elementary to discuss potential modifications to my teaching responsibilities that might allow me to develop expertise in working with children facing special challenges. The school served several students who were managing chronic medical conditions or family crises that affected their educational experience, and there appeared to be opportunities to develop specialized support programs that could address both academic and emotional needs more comprehensively. The initial conversations with both the hospital and school administrators revealed surprising enthusiasm for the types of collaborative programs that David had envisioned in his letter. Dr. Martinez explained that Seattle Children's Hospital had been seeking ways to enhance their educational support services, recognizing that academic continuity was essential for maintaining normalcy and hope during extended treatment periods. The hospital's current programs were limited by staffing constraints and lack of expertise in educational methodology. Similarly, the administrators at Maple Valley Elementary had been concerned about their capacity to support students who face significant challenges outside the conventional educational framework. The school's counseling and support services were adequate for typical developmental and academic issues, but provided limited resources for children dealing with serious medical conditions, family crises, or emotional trauma that required more specialized intervention approaches. The convergence of needs at both institutions suggested genuine opportunities for developing programs that could address gaps in current services while creating meaningful work that utilized my educational background and honored David's commitment to helping children facing difficult circumstances. However, pursuing these opportunities would require significant changes in my professional focus and personal priorities that demanded careful consideration. The practical implications of transitioning from conventional teaching to specialized therapeutic education included substantial reductions in immediate financial compensation, requirements for additional training and certification, and acceptance of increased emotional demands associated with working with children facing serious challenges. Unlike David's situation where his corporate income had provided financial security while he developed his artistic and therapeutic expertise, I would need to make career transitions without the buffer of alternative income sources. However, the financial considerations were complicated by the inheritance and insurance benefits that resulted from David's death. While these resources could not replace his income indefinitely, they provided sufficient security to allow me to pursue less financially rewarding but more personally meaningful work for several years, while I developed expertise and established sustainable income sources in therapeutic education fields. More significantly, I realized that my resistance to considering dramatic career changes reflected assumptions about security and conventional success that David's example had fundamentally challenged. His willingness to maintain demanding dual careers in pursuit of authentic fulfillment demonstrated possibilities for professional engagement that extended far beyond simple financial calculation or social recognition. The process of exploring these possibilities required me to examine my own relationship with risk, purpose, and the elements that constituted a meaningful life. David's artistic work and therapeutic contributions had created lasting positive impact on dozens of children and families, representing a legacy that transcended any measure of conventional professional success. His example suggested that authentic contribution often required accepting uncertainty and temporary sacrifice in pursuit of work that aligned with genuine values and capabilities. During this period of exploration and decision-making, I continued visiting David's studio regularly, finding inspiration and guidance in his artistic work and the documentation of his therapeutic practice. The notebooks and materials he had left behind provided a comprehensive record of his development from tentative beginner to accomplished practitioner, offering insights into the process of building expertise in meaningful work despite initial uncertainty and practical obstacles. One particular series of paintings that David had created during his final months depicted children engaged in various learning activities, rendered with extraordinary attention to the concentration and determination visible in their faces and postures. These paintings captured something essential about the educational process that extended beyond simple skill development to encompass the confidence and self-discovery that effective teaching could facilitate. The paintings reminded me of moments in my own teaching experience, when I had witnessed similar breakthrough moments in students who had struggled with conventional approaches but found success through alternative methods or individualized attention. These experiences had always been the most satisfying aspects of my teaching career, though I had not previously considered them as evidence of special capabilities that might be applicable in other contexts. Patricia Williams proved to be an unexpected source of support and guidance during this period of exploration. Her years of working closely with David had provided her with insights into his decision-making process and the practical considerations involved in pursuing meaningful career transitions. She understood the financial and professional implications of the choices I was considering, while also appreciating the potential for personal fulfillment that such changes might provide. Patricia offered to serve as an informal advisor as I navigated the process of evaluating opportunities and making decisions about my professional future. Her business experience and understanding of David's perspective provided valuable external perspective on considerations that were difficult to assess objectively, while managing grief and processing major life changes simultaneously. Through conversations with Patricia, I began to develop a systematic approach to evaluating the opportunities that David's letter had suggested. Rather than making impulsive decisions based on emotional inspiration or fear-based resistance to change, I could analyze the practical requirements and potential outcomes associated with different professional directions, while maintaining awareness of the personal fulfillment and contribution factors that were equally important. The evaluation process revealed that transitioning to therapeutic education work would require approximately 18 months of training and certification development, during which I could continue part-time teaching while building expertise in specialized areas. This approach would provide income continuity, while allowing me to test my aptitude and interest in the new field before making complete career transitions. More importantly, the gradual transition approach would allow me to develop confidence and competence in therapeutic education, without the pressure of immediate financial necessity or the risk of discovering that the work was not suitable for my temperament and abilities. David's notebooks documented his own gradual development process, suggesting that building expertise in meaningful work required patience and sustained commitment, rather than dramatic overnight transformation. The decision to begin volunteer training at Seattle Children's Hospital while maintaining reduced teaching responsibilities at Maple Valley Elementary represented a compromise that honored both practical necessities and authentic interests. This approach would allow me to explore David's vision for collaborative therapeutic education programs, while maintaining the financial stability and professional relationships that provided security during a period of significant personal transition. However, the decision also represented a fundamental shift in my understanding of professional purpose and personal potential. Rather than viewing work primarily as a source of income and social recognition, I was beginning to consider possibilities for contribution and fulfillment that extended beyond conventional measures of career success. David's example had demonstrated that authentic engagement with meaningful work often required accepting initial uncertainty and temporary sacrifice in pursuit of larger purposes. The final factor that influenced my decision was the recognition that pursuing therapeutic education represented not just a career change, but an opportunity to honor David's memory through continuation and expansion of his commitment to helping children facing serious challenges. While I could never replace his artistic expertise or replicate his specific contributions, I could carry forward his fundamental conviction that individual commitment and skill could create lasting positive impact on young people who needed support and encouragement. The week before beginning volunteer orientation at the hospital, I spent several days in David's studio creating a comprehensive inventory of his artistic work and therapeutic materials. The process provided opportunities for reflection on his development as both artist and educator, while also helping me understand the practical requirements for maintaining and expanding the types of programs he had been developing. Many of David's paintings were suitable for permanent display in therapeutic environments where they could continue providing inspiration and comfort to children and families facing medical challenges. His collection of art supplies and instructional materials could support continuation of the therapeutic art programs he had helped establish, ensuring that his practical contributions would extend beyond his individual participation. As I prepared to begin this new phase of my life, I understood that David's greatest gift to me was not just the revelation of his secret artistic passion, but his demonstration that authentic living required courage to pursue meaningful work despite uncertainty and potential obstacles. His example had shown me possibilities for contribution and fulfillment that I had never seriously considered, while also providing practical guidance for how such transitions could be approached systematically and successfully. The woman who had discovered David's secret studio 3 weeks earlier had been focused primarily on processing loss and managing the practical details of widowhood. The woman preparing to begin volunteer training at Seattle Children's Hospital was someone committed to honoring her husband's legacy while pursuing her own potential for meaningful contribution to children and families who needed support during difficult circumstances. The volunteer orientation at Seattle Children's Hospital began on a crisp November morning that marked the beginning of what would prove to be the most challenging and transformative period of my professional development. The training program required 40 hours of intensive instruction spread across 2 weeks, covering medical terminology, child development principles, therapeutic communication techniques, and the specific protocols that governed interaction with pediatric patients and their families. 23 volunteers participated in the orientation session, representing diverse professional backgrounds and personal motivations for hospital service. The group included retired educators, corporate professionals seeking meaningful engagement during career transitions, college students pursuing health-related degrees, and individuals like myself who had been drawn to therapeutic work through personal experiences with serious medical situations. Dr. Amanda Foster, the hospital's Director of Volunteer Services, conducted the opening session with remarkable skill in establishing both the significance of the work we were preparing to undertake and the professional standards that would be required for effective service. Her presentation emphasized that volunteer work at Seattle Children's Hospital was not casual charity activity, but rather an integral component of comprehensive patient care that demanded competence, reliability, and emotional maturity. The training curriculum covered areas of knowledge that extended far beyond my previous educational experience, requiring intensive study of medical conditions that affected children, understanding of family dynamics during health crises, and development of communication skills that could provide comfort and support without overstepping appropriate boundaries between volunteers and patients. The medical terminology component proved particularly challenging, requiring mastery of vocabulary related to pediatric oncology, cardiac conditions, neurological disorders, and other serious health issues that brought children to the hospital for extended treatment. Understanding these medical realities was essential for effective communication with both patients and families, as well as for appropriate collaboration with professional medical staff. However, the most demanding aspect of the training involved learning to manage the emotional challenges associated with working closely with children facing serious health concerns. Dr. Foster emphasized that effective volunteer service required developing resilience and emotional regulation skills that would allow us to provide consistent support to patients and families while maintaining our own psychological well-being throughout extended exposure to difficult circumstances. The training included simulation exercises that helped volunteers practice appropriate responses to various scenarios we might encounter during hospital service. These exercises revealed the complexity of therapeutic communication, particularly the importance of providing emotional support while avoiding false reassurances or inappropriate involvement in medical decision-making processes that remained the responsibility of professional staff. My educational background provided advantages in understanding child development principles and communication techniques. But the hospital environment presented applications of these skills that differed significantly from conventional classroom settings. Children receiving medical treatment often experienced anxiety, fear, and uncertainty that affected their ability to engage with educational or creative activities in ways that required modified approaches and specialized sensitivity. The training also included extensive information about the various programs where volunteers could contribute their skills and interests. The therapeutic art program that had captured David's passion represented only one component of comprehensive support services that addressed academic continuity, emotional processing, family support, recreational activities, and spiritual care for children and families facing extended hospital involvement. The educational support program particularly interested me, as it addressed the challenge of maintaining academic progress for children whose medical treatment required extended absence from conventional school environments. The program provided tutoring, curriculum modification, and liaison services with homeschool districts to ensure that medical treatment did not create additional educational disadvantages that could affect long-term academic and career prospects. Dr. Jennifer Patel, who supervised the educational support program, explained that many children receiving treatment at Seattle Children's Hospital were academically gifted students whose educational development could be severely disrupted by extended medical treatment unless appropriate support services were provided. The program aimed to maintain both academic progress and intellectual engagement that could provide important psychological benefits during challenging treatment periods. The complexity of providing effective educational support in hospital settings required understanding of diverse learning styles, ability to modify curriculum materials for various medical limitations, and skill in motivating students who might be experiencing pain, fatigue, or emotional distress that affected their capacity for academic work. These challenges demanded creativity and flexibility that extended far beyond conventional teaching methods. During the second week of training, volunteers were assigned to observe experienced practitioners in their chosen program areas. I spent 3 days shadowing Maria Santos, a former high school English teacher who had been providing educational support services at the hospital for 4 years. Her approach combined academic rigor with remarkable sensitivity to the individual circumstances and needs of each student she worked with. Maria's first student of the morning was 15-year-old Jason, who was receiving treatment for osteosarcoma while attempting to maintain his sophomore-level coursework. Jason had been an honor student before his diagnosis, but the combination of chemotherapy side effects and extended hospital stays had created significant gaps in his academic progress that threatened his ability to advance with his class. Observing Maria work with Jason revealed the sophisticated skills required for effective therapeutic education. She had developed modified approaches to algebra and chemistry that accommodated his fluctuating energy levels and concentration abilities, while maintaining academic standards that would allow him to continue his college preparatory coursework. Her methods combined individual instruction with collaborative projects that could be completed in segments that matched his treatment schedule. The session also demonstrated the importance of emotional support that extended beyond academic instruction. Maria consistently acknowledged Jason's frustration with his altered circumstances while helping him maintain focus on achievable goals that could provide a sense of progress and accomplishment despite the limitations imposed by his medical situation. The second student I observed was 8-year-old Samantha, who was receiving treatment for a rare genetic condition that required frequent hospitalizations and limited her ability to attend conventional school regularly. Samantha's situation required extensive coordination with her homeschool district to ensure that her educational program remained appropriate for her grade level while accommodating the practical constraints of her medical treatment schedule. Maria had developed individualized curriculum materials that allowed Samantha to work independently during periods when her energy and concentration were adequate, while providing intensive support during times when her medical condition affected her learning capacity. The approach required constant assessment and adjustment based on Samantha's changing medical status and educational needs. Working with Samantha also involved collaboration with her parents, who were struggling to balance their daughter's medical care with her educational development, while managing their own emotional stress and practical challenges associated with extended hospital involvement. Maria provided both direct educational support to Samantha and guidance to her parents about how they could continue her learning activities during periods at home. The complexity of these situations highlighted the sophisticated skills that effective therapeutic education required. Success depended on understanding individual learning styles and medical limitations, ability to collaborate with medical staff and family members, knowledge of educational standards and curriculum requirements, and emotional maturity to maintain appropriate boundaries while providing meaningful support during extremely challenging circumstances. My third day of observation involved working with a group of children ages 6 through 12 who were participating in a collaborative learning project designed to maintain social interaction and peer relationships during extended hospital stays. The project involved creating a multimedia presentation about different world cultures, allowing children to contribute research and creative elements based on their individual interests and capabilities. The group dynamic presented additional challenges that required sophisticated facilitation skills. Children at different developmental stages and with varying medical conditions needed support in finding appropriate ways to contribute to the collaborative effort while maintaining engagement with academic learning objectives. The project required constant modification based on which children were able to participate on any given day and how their medical status affected their capacity for group work. Observing this group session revealed the importance of flexibility and creativity in therapeutic education settings. Maria continuously adjusted the project parameters to accommodate changing group composition and individual limitations, while maintaining educational value and social engagement that contributed to the children's overall well-being during hospital treatment. The session also demonstrated the powerful psychological benefits that effective educational programming could provide to children facing serious medical challenges. Engagement with meaningful learning activities helped normalize their experience and maintain connections to their identity as students, with intellectual capabilities and academic futures beyond their current medical circumstances. Following the observation period, I participated in evaluation sessions with Dr. Patel and Maria to assess my readiness for independent volunteer work and determine the most appropriate initial assignments for my skill level and interests. These discussions revealed that my teaching background provided valuable preparation for therapeutic education work, but that developing expertise in hospital settings would require additional experience and training beyond the basic orientation program. Dr. Patel explained that new volunteers typically began with limited responsibilities that allowed them to develop confidence and competence gradually, while receiving ongoing supervision and feedback from experienced practitioners. Initial assignments might include working with individual students on specific subjects, assisting with group projects under direct supervision, or providing support for family members who were helping children maintain educational progress during treatment. The evaluation process also addressed the emotional challenges associated with therapeutic education work and strategies for maintaining psychological resilience while working closely with children facing serious health concerns. Dr. Patel emphasized that effective volunteers needed realistic understanding of the limitations inherent in volunteer roles and appropriate boundaries that protected both volunteers and the families they served. The training concluded with a formal ceremony that marked our transition from orientation participants to active volunteers in the hospital's therapeutic programs. The ceremony included presentations by children and families who had benefited from volunteer services, providing powerful testimony about the impact that dedicated volunteers could have on patient experiences and treatment outcomes. 12-year-old Marcus, who had completed treatment for leukemia 6 months earlier, spoke about how educational support volunteers had helped him maintain his academic progress during 18 months of treatment that would otherwise have created significant educational setbacks. His presentation emphasized that the volunteers had provided not just academic instruction, but also encouragement and hope that his intellectual development would continue despite his medical challenges. Marcus's mother, Dr. Angela Thompson, added her perspective as both a parent and a pediatric surgeon who understood the hospital environment from multiple perspectives. She explained that volunteer programs provided essential support services that complemented medical treatment, while addressing emotional and developmental needs that were equally important for comprehensive patient care. The ceremony concluded with our formal commitment to specific volunteer schedules and program assignments for the following 6 months. I was assigned to work with the Educational Support Program 3 afternoons per week. providing individual tutoring and group project assistance under Maria's supervision while developing expertise in therapeutic education techniques. The assignment represented exactly the type of gradual transition that I had hoped to achieve, allowing me to develop new skills while maintaining my part-time teaching responsibilities at Maple Valley Elementary. The schedule would provide sufficient experience to evaluate my aptitude for therapeutic education work while preserving the financial stability and professional relationships that provided security during this period of career exploration. As I prepared to begin my volunteer service, I reflected on how dramatically my understanding of educational purpose and professional potential had evolved since discovering David's secret artistic life. The conventional teaching career that had once defined my professional identity now seemed like preparation for more meaningful work that could address the comprehensive needs of children facing extraordinary challenges. David's vision for collaborative therapeutic education programs had introduced me to possibilities for professional engagement that combined academic instruction with emotional support, creative expression, and family collaboration in ways that created lasting positive impact on children's lives. While I could not replicate his artistic expertise, I was discovering that my educational background provided valuable foundation for contributing to similar meaningful work through different but complementary approaches. The volunteer training had also revealed the extensive infrastructure of support services that enabled individual volunteers to contribute effectively to complex therapeutic programs. Unlike the isolation that often characterized conventional teaching environments, hospital-based therapeutic education involved continuous collaboration with medical professionals, family members, and specialized staff who shared responsibility for comprehensive patient care. This collaborative environment offered opportunities for professional development and meaningful contribution that extended far beyond what individual volunteers could accomplish independently. The systematic approach to training, supervision, and program development demonstrated how individual commitment could be leveraged through institutional support to create sustainable programs that served large numbers of children and families over extended periods. As I began this new phase of my professional development, I understood that David's greatest legacy was not just his artistic work or therapeutic contributions, but his demonstration that authentic living required courage to pursue meaningful work, despite initial uncertainty and practical obstacles. His example had shown me possibilities for professional fulfillment that I had never seriously considered, while providing practical guidance for how such transitions could be approached systematically and successfully. The woman who had discovered David's secret studio 6 weeks earlier had been focused primarily on processing loss and managing the practical details of widowhood. The woman preparing to begin volunteer service at Seattle Children's Hospital was someone committed to honoring her husband's legacy, while pursuing her own potential for meaningful contribution to children and families who needed support during the most challenging periods of their lives. My first independent session as a volunteer educator at Seattle Children's Hospital took place on a December afternoon when the early winter darkness seemed to press against the windows of the pediatric ward. The assignment involved working with 13-year-old Emma Rodriguez, who had been receiving treatment for cystic fibrosis for the past 8 weeks and was struggling to maintain her 8th grade mathematics coursework while managing the demanding medical protocol that governed her daily routine. Emma's situation represented exactly the type of complex challenge that the hospital's educational support program was designed to address. Her academic performance prior to hospitalization had been exemplary, with particular strength in mathematics and science that suggested college preparatory potential. However, the combination of respiratory treatments, medication side effects, and extended separation from her regular classroom environment had created significant gaps in her mathematical understanding that threatened her ability to advance to high school algebra the following year. The medical team had established a treatment schedule that required respiratory therapy sessions every 4 hours, medication administration at precise intervals, and regular monitoring of her pulmonary function that limited the time available for sustained academic work. Emma's energy levels fluctuated throughout the day based on her treatment schedule and physical condition, requiring educational approaches that could accommodate unpredictable variations in her capacity for concentrated learning. Dr. Patel had provided detailed background information about Emma's academic history, learning preferences, and current educational needs, along with specific guidance about how her medical condition might affect her ability to engage with mathematical concepts that required extended concentration and problem-solving effort. The preparation emphasized the importance of flexibility and sensitivity in adapting instructional approaches to Emma's changing circumstances while maintaining academic rigor appropriate for her ability level. Emma greeted me in the hospital's education room with a mixture of politeness and skepticism that seemed characteristic of adolescents who had been disappointed by adult promises in the past. Her appearance reflected the physical toll of extended medical treatment, but her direct gaze and articulate questions about my background and teaching experience suggested intellectual curiosity and determination that had not been diminished by her medical circumstances. The initial conversation revealed that Emma's primary concern was not her immediate comfort or emotional state, but rather her anxiety about falling behind academically in ways that might affect her long-term educational and career prospects. She had been an honors student before her hospitalization, and was deeply worried that the gaps in her mathematical knowledge would prevent her from pursuing the advanced coursework necessary for her goal of studying biomedical engineering in college. Emma's academic concerns reflected remarkable maturity and perspective for someone facing serious health challenges. Rather than focusing primarily on her medical treatment or immediate discomfort, she was thinking strategically about how her current circumstances might affect her future opportunities, and what actions she could take to minimize negative educational consequences, despite the limitations imposed by her hospitalization. The mathematical concepts that Emma needed to master involved algebraic equations and geometric principles that typically required sustained practice and reinforcement through homework assignments and classroom discussion. However, her medical treatment schedule made conventional study approaches impractical, requiring modified instructional methods that could deliver the same learning outcomes through alternative approaches that accommodated her physical limitations and time constraints. Working through the first mathematical problems with Emma revealed both the challenges and opportunities inherent in therapeutic education. Her understanding of basic mathematical principles remained solid, despite her extended absence from conventional classroom instruction, but she had missed critical developmental sequences that connected elementary concepts to more advanced applications. The gaps in her knowledge were specific and addressable, but required individualized instruction that could rebuild missing foundational elements while advancing her overall mathematical sophistication. Emma's approach to problem-solving demonstrated intellectual capabilities that had been enhanced rather than diminished by her medical experiences. Her systematic thinking about complex treatment protocols and medication management had developed analytical skills that transferred effectively to mathematical reasoning. The precision required for monitoring her medical condition had strengthened her attention to detail and logical sequencing abilities that proved valuable for algebraic manipulation and geometric proof construction. The session also revealed Emma's remarkable resilience and determination to maintain control over aspects of her life that remained within her influence, despite the medical circumstances that dominated her daily routine. Her commitment to academic excellence represented not just educational ambition, but psychological strategy for maintaining hope and purpose during a period when many elements of her life felt uncertain and beyond her control. However, the most significant aspect of working with Emma was discovering how therapeutic education could provide benefits that extended far beyond academic instruction. The process of successfully solving mathematical problems offered Emma immediate evidence of her continued intellectual capabilities and progress toward important personal goals. Each completed assignment represented a small victory that contributed to her overall sense of competence and hope during an extremely challenging period. The educational session became a collaborative effort in which Emma's medical experiences provided real-world applications for mathematical concepts that made abstract principles more meaningful and memorable. Calculating medication dosages reinforced proportional reasoning skills. Analyzing treatment scheduling required time management and optimization thinking. Understanding statistical information about treatment outcomes involved data analysis and probability concepts that connected directly to her advanced mathematics curriculum. This integration of medical experience with academic learning created educational opportunities that were more engaging and relevant than conventional textbook problems. Emma was learning mathematical concepts through applications that had immediate personal significance, while developing analytical skills that would serve her well in the biomedical engineering career she hoped to pursue. Working with Emma also provided insights into the emotional and social challenges that extended hospital stays created for adolescent patients. Despite her intellectual maturity and determined approach to academic work, Emma struggled with isolation from her peer group and uncertainty about how her medical condition might affect her ability to participate in the social and extracurricular activities that typically defined teenage experience. The educational sessions provided structured interaction with an adult mentor who could offer encouragement and perspective while maintaining appropriate boundaries that respected both Emma's autonomy and her family's role in supporting her through medical treatment. The relationship combined academic instruction with emotional support in ways that addressed her comprehensive developmental needs during a critical period of her adolescence. Emma's mother, Carmen Rodriguez, participated in educational planning sessions that ensured coordination between hospital-based instruction and the support she could provide during times when Emma was able to work on assignments independently. Carmen had completed college coursework in business administration and was able to assist with certain subjects, but she lacked confidence in mathematics that limited her ability to help Emma with the advanced concepts she needed to master. The collaboration with Carmen demonstrated the family-centered approach that characterized effective therapeutic education programs. Rather than simply providing direct instruction to students, the program aimed to strengthen family capacity for supporting continued learning while building relationships that could extend beyond the immediate hospitalization period. Carmen learned strategies for encouraging Emma's mathematical development that she could continue implementing after they returned home. The educational support program also involved coordination with Emma's homeschool district to ensure that the work she completed during hospitalization would receive appropriate academic credit, and that her transition back to conventional classroom instruction would proceed smoothly. This coordination required detailed documentation of her progress and communication with teachers who would be responsible for her continued mathematical education. Working within this collaborative framework revealed the sophisticated infrastructure that enabled individual volunteers to contribute effectively to comprehensive patient care. The educational support I provided to Emma was enhanced by medical staff who monitored her energy levels and adjusted treatment schedules to optimize her capacity for learning, social workers who addressed family concerns and resource needs, and school district personnel who ensured academic continuity and credit recognition. The systematic approach to therapeutic education demonstrated how individual commitment could be leveraged through institutional support to create sustainable programs that served large numbers of children and families over extended periods. My contribution to Emma's education was meaningful not because of exceptional individual capabilities, but because it was embedded within comprehensive support systems that addressed the complex needs of children facing serious medical challenges. After 3 weeks of working with Emma, her mathematical understanding had progressed to the point where she could rejoin her regular classroom instruction without significant remediation when her medical treatment was completed. More importantly, her confidence in her academic capabilities had been restored and strengthened through the successful completion of challenging coursework, despite the difficult circumstances of her hospitalization. Emma's success represented validation of both the therapeutic education approach and my own developing expertise in hospital-based instruction. The experience demonstrated that meaningful educational progress was possible even in medical environments when appropriate support and individualized instruction were provided by volunteers who understood both academic requirements and the unique challenges that hospital patients faced. However, the most significant outcome of working with Emma was my growing understanding of how therapeutic education could create lasting positive impact that extended far beyond immediate academic instruction. The skills Emma developed for managing complex challenges, the confidence she gained through academic success during difficult circumstances, and the relationships she formed with supportive adults would influence her approach to future obstacles and opportunities throughout her life. The experience also highlighted the personal satisfaction and professional fulfillment that could result from meaningful work with children facing serious challenges. Unlike conventional teaching environments where academic progress often seemed incremental and abstract, therapeutic education provided immediate evidence of positive impact on students who needed support during the most challenging periods of their lives. Working with Emma had required me to develop instructional approaches that were more flexible, creative, and responsive than anything I had attempted in conventional classroom settings. The experience had strengthened my problem-solving abilities, deepened my understanding of individual learning differences, and enhanced my capacity for providing emotional support while maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. The success with Emma led to additional assignments with students facing various medical conditions and educational challenges. Each situation required different approaches and strategies, but all shared the common elements of individualized instruction, family collaboration, and integration with comprehensive medical care that characterized effective therapeutic education programs. My second major assignment involved working with 10-year-old Michael Chen, who was receiving treatment for leukemia while attempting to maintain his fifth-grade curriculum. Michael's situation differed significantly from Emma's in terms of both medical condition and educational needs, requiring completely different instructional approaches and support strategies. Michael's treatment protocol included chemotherapy that affected his concentration and memory in ways that required modified approaches to reading comprehension and mathematical problem-solving. However, his natural curiosity and enthusiasm for learning remained strong, and he responded well to educational activities that incorporated creative expression and hands-on exploration of academic concepts. Working with Michael revealed different aspects of therapeutic education that emphasized engagement and motivation rather than the academic rigor that had been appropriate for Emma's situation. Michael needed educational experiences that maintained his love of learning and sense of intellectual competence while accommodating the cognitive effects of his medical treatment. The collaboration with Michael's family involved different considerations than those that had been relevant for Emma's situation. Michael's parents, both working professionals with limited educational background, needed more extensive support and guidance about how they could contribute to his academic development during treatment. The cultural and linguistic factors that influenced the family's approach to education required sensitivity and adaptation in communication strategies and instructional materials. These varied experiences with different students and families provided comprehensive exposure to the range of challenges and opportunities that characterized therapeutic education work. Each situation required different skills and approaches, but all shared the common goal of maintaining educational progress and hope during extremely difficult circumstances. The progression from initial training through supervised observation to independent work with individual students had provided systematic development of expertise in therapeutic education that built confidence and competence gradually while ensuring quality services for the children and families I worked with. The support and mentorship provided by experienced staff members had been essential for developing the sophisticated skills required for effective hospital-based educational work. As I completed my first semester of volunteer service at Seattle Children's Hospital, I understood that David's vision for meaningful work with children facing serious challenges had become a reality that honored his memory while providing personal fulfillment and professional development that exceeded anything I had experienced in conventional teaching environments. The therapeutic education work represented not just career transition, but fundamental transformation in my understanding of educational purpose and individual potential for creating positive impact on others' lives. The transition into spring brought with it a fundamental shift in my role at Seattle Children's Hospital, from supervised volunteer to trusted team member, whose expertise was increasingly recognized and valued by both medical staff and administrative leadership. 6 months of consistent therapeutic education work had established my reputation as someone who could effectively address complex educational challenges while maintaining the emotional sensitivity required for hospital-based instruction, with children facing serious medical conditions. Dr. Patel approached me in early March with a proposal that would significantly expand my responsibilities within the educational support program. The hospital had received funding to develop a pilot program that would provide comprehensive educational services to children requiring extended hospitalization, and she wanted me to serve as the lead educational coordinator for this initiative. The position would require transitioning from part-time volunteer work to a formal staff position, with substantial responsibility for program development and implementation. The pilot program represented exactly the type of systematic approach to therapeutic education that David had envisioned in his letters and notebooks. Rather than providing ad hoc educational support to individual patients, the program would establish comprehensive services that addressed academic continuity, family education support, transition planning, and collaboration with homeschool districts to ensure seamless integration between hospital-based instruction and conventional educational environments. The scope of responsibility associated with the lead coordinator position was substantial and would require expertise in educational program development, staff training and supervision, family counseling and support, collaboration with medical teams, and coordination with external educational institutions. The position represented a significant advancement in professional responsibility that would utilize my teaching background while requiring development of additional skills in program administration and therapeutic intervention. However, accepting the position would also require making a definitive commitment to therapeutic education as my primary career focus, rather than maintaining it as volunteer work that supplemented my conventional teaching position. The financial compensation was competitive with my teaching salary, but the emotional demands and professional challenges would be significantly greater than anything I had experienced in conventional educational environments. The decision required careful consideration of both practical factors and personal goals. The pilot program represented an opportunity to implement David's vision for comprehensive therapeutic education while building a career that aligned with my evolving understanding of meaningful work and authentic contribution. However, it also represented a complete departure from the professional security and predictable routine that had characterized my teaching career. Dr. Patel provided detailed information about the pilot program's objectives and implementation timeline. The program would serve approximately 50 children annually, providing individualized educational plans that addressed both immediate academic needs and long-term educational continuity requirements. The program would employ 3 full-time educational specialists, supported by trained volunteers and coordinated through partnerships with regional school districts and educational technology providers. The lead coordinator position would involve developing individualized educational plans for each participating child, training and supervising educational specialists and volunteers, maintaining relationships with homeschool districts and educational technology vendors, collaborating with medical teams to optimize educational programming around treatment schedules, and evaluating program effectiveness through systematic data collection and analysis. The complexity and scope of these responsibilities exceeded anything I had previously undertaken, but my experience working with individual students had provided foundation knowledge and practical skills that would be essential for successful program implementation. The systematic approach to therapeutic education that the pilot program represented would leverage individual expertise through institutional support to create sustainable services that could serve large numbers of children and families over extended periods. More significantly, the pilot program offered opportunities to develop innovative approaches to therapeutic education that could influence practice standards throughout the region and potentially serve as a model for similar programs at other medical institutions. The program's emphasis on research and evaluation would generate evidence about effective practices that could contribute to the broader field of educational therapy and hospital-based instruction. The possibility of contributing to knowledge development and practice improvement in therapeutic education represented exactly the type of meaningful professional engagement that David had pursued through his artistic and therapeutic work. The pilot program would provide opportunities to create lasting positive impact that extended far beyond immediate service to individual patients and families. After extensive consideration and consultation with family members and professional mentors, I decided to accept the lead coordinator position and commit fully to therapeutic education as my primary career focus. The decision represented not just a change in employment, but a fundamental transformation in my understanding of professional purpose and personal potential for creating meaningful impact through work that aligned with authentic interests and values. The transition to full-time therapeutic education work required intensive preparation during the month before the pilot program's official launch. I participated in advanced training programs in educational therapy techniques, family counseling approaches, program evaluation methods, and collaborative planning strategies that would be essential for effective program implementation and leadership. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.